It's that time. Your fix is here. College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
It is the final JC and Morgan of August, but college football has already started in earnest. We are there. We are here. Week 0 has come and gone. Week 1 and a really good slate of games in week 1 is coming right at you here in a matter of days. He's JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports. Mike Morgan with you here. Mad Dog Phil Mullinax, our fearless producer. Usually we would say in radio land behind the glass. He's not actually behind the glass. He's just like in his living room or something. With technology, we don't have to be behind the glass or stuck in some smoke-filled, disgusting, coffee-stained studio. No. Thankfully, Zoom has allowed all of us to get out of that world forever. jcandmorgan.com is the website. If you have been on this show before or on listening to us before, then you know. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Spotify. We are on iTunes. We are on Google Play. And yes, we are on the award-winning Chief Sports app. Tim Brando. We had Tom Luganbill, a great friend of the program last week. Tim Brando, another one, will join us in about a half hour. We'll have the JC5 in mere moments. Group 5. John has his list that I want to get to. It's a good one. Kind of some of the top matchups featuring some G5 teams today. First off, JC, before we rifle into the JC5, some closing or opening thoughts, I should say. We're not closing the show just yet. That'd be a record time for the shortest show of all time. Just some opening thoughts on week 0, and obviously the game that stole the show, Georgia Tech knocking down the mighty Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah, I mean, it was a treat that it was such a competitive ball game. I thought that us college football fans deserved that, and there were a lot of competitive games on Saturday, and a lot of them we thought would get out of control, did not. They're very tight games. I had a pretty good week with my picks too. I know. I think
if you picked the underdogs, you did great.
The only one I missed, I think I threw a little on the Nevada money line because I got bold there after everybody else covered. But a lot of points being laid as far as the underdogs go, and a lot of things that I don't think people thought about. I think, like I've said, we've lived in a world of assumptions this offseason. It's hard to assume. I was breaking down a game today, and there's a school about to play a game against an SEC team that has 57 newcomers on its roster. 57. It's a group of 5 school. So, yeah, it's been it's unpredictable. I have to kind of say that hats off to Georgia Tech and Brent Key. I think he's got it going in the right direction. And if you look at their offensive line, boy, they looked good physically. They're nasty. They're big. They play together. He's an offensive line coach and really a savant at that position. Probably one of the best O-line coaches in the country. So I'm not surprised. Hats off to Haynes King. Talk about a redemption song. I mean, that guy, after things didn't work out at A&M, he kind of got tossed into the dustbin of former Aggie quarterbacks. And look at him now. He can run. He can throw. He's tough as nails. Georgia Tech could definitely make some noise in the ACC this year. Florida State lost too many players. And our friend Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports pointed that out on Twitter or X afterward. And I don't think he's ever been high on FSU. I started having some questions when I looked at the roster because you just don't replace Keon Coleman and Jordan Travis and Jared Verse and all that. Sure, you got play guys that have talent, but I mean, just because Marvin Jones Jr.'s name is Marvin Jones does not mean he's the ball player Jared Verse was. You know, I think it still gets back to people they don't want to let go of high school. I have a friend like that, won't let go of high school. I'm like, look, you guys do realize recruiting rankings are based on high school. We don't certify doctors and lawyers because they won most likely to be a doctor in the senior superlatives in high school. We very rarely marry, some do, and good for them. We very rarely marry the girl or guy we're dating in high school. We very rarely can't the people that don't let go of high school, a lot of them, they don't do very well in life. It's high school. Okay. And everybody does the best they can. And recruiting rankings absolutely matter. You always want more 4 and 5 stars because the percentages are higher. They're going to pan out. But you can't just assume, especially when you're talking, Mike, about guys that are playing in the NFL, that the NFL said, all right, this is a guy. Jared Verse is a guy. Marvin Jones Jr. is a big name, but he's not a guy yet. He was a guy in high school. So, and then the transfer portal, we've talked about it many times in other sports too. Sometimes you could live off of it for a while. Sometimes you get a bad group, and that's not so. And I'm not saying that's the case with Florida State. I think FSU, you could kind of tell with their body language, they took this game really lightly. And I know you're going to talk about DJU a little bit with that. I kind of saved that for you, Mike. And that was
okay.
That was a big difference. One quarterback played like a winner. One quarterback played like he looked at Clemson. I'm not saying he played bad and he's the reason they lost. I think it was more on their defense, but just not a guy that's a difference maker in a clutch situation and hasn't really been since 2020 when nobody played defense. So I'll pass that to you as far as their quarterbacks go.
Well, it's hard to pile on DJ because he didn't turn it over, right? Like usually when we're talking about a quarterback that cost his team the game or had a poor performance, somewhere along the line we're talking about interceptions and fumbles. Well, he didn't have either, but what he lacked was big plays. I mean, they connected on the key 2 4th down conversions late, both on just a simple quick slant. Like you can find kids on the JV high school team that can throw that ball. But overall, just the presence. There's just nothing spectacular about him. He's not bad. He's just not great. He's just not like Haynes King was the better quarterback. They lost, and I talked about this for a while. I mean, 2 wideouts, one who's like 6'7". He's like the reincarnation of Harold Carmichael. There's a name from the past. And then Keon Coleman, who I think is going to be a stud at the NFL level and was a transfer from Michigan State, who was incredibly valuable to Florida State's success. The teams that are winning national championships have usually really good quarterback play and really good wide receiver play. And you have just enough good defense, if not more, and you are a title team. That's what's been winning titles. If you look at from the 14 playoff era on, I think that's going to be the same this year. You look at the teams that are ranked most highly. It was a market correction that needed to be made on Florida State. And look, I wasn't pumping up Florida State, but I certainly didn't see this coming because I know enough about Georgia Tech, who, by the way, I mean, I think Brent Key's fantastic and he's a great hire, but he's 12-10 at Georgia Tech. They haven't exactly like turned this thing into a powerhouse. What's amazing to me, and by the way, Florida State threw for 193 yards. They ran for under 100 and averaged a little over 3 yards a carry. The line of scrimmage, a bunch of 3-star undersized guys beat the hell out of portal power and 4- and 5-star recruits. I mean, that you could make the case is where this game was won and lost. And for me, I know Georgia Tech will have a nice bandwagon period. And that's great. I don't think they're a threat to win the ACC. And I think it's more about what Florida State is not. They're just not that good. Yeah, they might have taken the game lightly. They picked up a nice paycheck, $5-6 million. It didn't count against their home games. Technically, this was Georgia Tech's home game to lose. There were all kinds of exposure, drinking Guinnesses, hanging out with Pat McAfee. And I'm not saying the players were, but you get the idea. The fans were. I ran into some fans that actually made that trip, spent a lot of hard-earned money to make it. Boy, that's a long flight back when you take an L to a middle-of-the-road ACC team. But, yeah, I mean, it can happen. It can happen, and it might be the scared straight program for teams that want to schedule like a game like this in the future. But I don't know. I mean, if this game was in Tallahassee, I don't know if Florida State wins it. They just didn't look good. They just didn't look good. And sometimes you drink your own Kool-Aid and you look at the number 10 next to your name and you figure, well, we just reload around here. We don't rebuild. And for a long time under Bobby Bowden, that was the case. But I'll tell you this, I started last week's program, and I ran a number off with you and Lugs about last year after Florida beat Tennessee. It was the first time Florida State, Miami, and Florida were all ranked in the top 25 in a while. The last time they all finished in the top 10 was 2000, which is not that long ago. But we'll see what Florida does against Miami. One of those teams is going to lose, and everybody's going to be like, oh, crap, same old, same old. So you're going to have two really pissed off fan bases in the state of Florida with those big three. And we'll see what the other program does, who actually wins it. It's going to be very interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Speaking of Brando, he called the New Mexico-Montana State game. The Fighting Craig Kilborns win that one 35-31. SMU needed a rally to beat Nevada. Russell Maryland's kid's the tight end, and he went off against the Wolfpack. They don't win that game without young Russell Jr., whatever his first name is. I already forgot it. Hawaii beat Delaware State, blah, 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 blah. So that was week 0. Week 1, I'm just going to tell you, and then we'll go right into the JC5 rapid fire. The triple header that week 1 has is unreal. It's to be able to start off with Georgia Clemson, go to Florida Miami, and then finish with Texas A&M hosting Notre Dame. Good golly, Miss Molly, that's fantastic. And oh, by the way, Southern Cal LSU on Sunday. So it's here, man. It is fantastic. We are as psyched as you are, and we got a lot to get to. It is JC and Morgan, presented by Site Pro Rentals. When you're renting equipment, important to have a local, easy-to-do business with friends in the industry. That's why we count on Site Pro Rentals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 for better equipment, better service, better everything. Site Pro Rentals. And now, without further introduction, well, with a little introduction, here's the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right, Mike. Number 1, Notre Dame plays Texas A&M Saturday night, College Station, Texas, the debut of Mike Elko. What bowl would you associate Notre Dame and A&M with historically? Just if you're thinking back through the years when these two teams have hooked up.
Well, A&M, I'd say Cotton Bowl is what comes to mind. I'm not sure if that's where you're going. And then Notre Dame, I think big-time bowl games when they were actually playing for big-time prizes. So, maybe the Orange Bowl, maybe something like that.
Well, yeah. Well, Notre Dame and A&M played, I think, a couple of times in the Cotton Bowl back during the R.C. Slocum era. Lou Holtz was the coach at Notre Dame. So there is some history there. So my question to you about that ball game would be, better game for the Aggies Saturday night? Like, which side of the ball will impress more, their defense or their offense?
Great question. I'll say man, you really came off the top rope with this first one. I'll say the defense. Now, Wigman, a healthy Connor Wigman, as we've discussed, has a chance to really showcase himself. There's a lot of scouts in the NFL that are already looking at him with a close eye. They believe he's got an NFL skill set. They believe he's one of the most raw talent guys in the sport. Take that for what it's worth. But all those recruits and transfers that they've been racking up on that defensive side, for whatever reason, underachieved greatly. Everything underachieved greatly under Jimbo. I think under Mike Elko, I think they come together, and they're going to be salty, and I think we're going to see that against a Notre Dame offense that I'm a Riley Leonard guy too, like Riley Leonard. But I think Notre Dame might have some problems scoring.
I would be concerned about that too against that defense. Notre Dame's also had some injuries on the offensive line, particularly at right tackle. I think they're starting a true freshman from the state of Georgia, 3-star guy against the Aggies, and the kid they got from, or the guy they got from Purdue is really, really good at A&M. I think it'll be kind of a defensive game. if we're being honest. But I'm not trusting Notre Dame's defense as much as maybe I am A&M's, especially in that environment. Okay, so we have some line movement coming out of Minneapolis. North Carolina was a 2.5-point underdog to the Golden Gophers. They opened Thursday night on the road up there during a heat wave, which is interesting. Heat waves hit the Midwest. You wouldn't think a road game in Minnesota would be that way. Mac Brown versus PJ Fleck, two coaches that I've noticed don't get a whole lot of hype anymore. If you're the Tar Heels, Mike, do you go in there and win the game, in your opinion? They got a new defensive coordinator in Jeff Collins, who used to be at Georgia Tech. They got a new quarterback in Max Johnson. Can the Tar Heels go in there and win? Because it looks like the money's come in and Vegas has now flipped the favorite.
By the way, it's like a golfer who has a great round but forgets to fill out his scorecard. Phil, what number are we on?
2.
Number 2.
Okay, now it's official. I'm going Tar Heels, JC. Marion Hampton, for those that don't know, it might be the best pure running back in college football. He's a stud. He's a stud. I've talked about a couple years ago my discussions with Mac Brown where they didn't like the reputation of being soft. Well, they've been soft. It's been a soft team. Unfortunately for Mac Brown during his time frame in Chapel Hill, like they've had a top 10 quarterback. They've had a couple of stud receivers. They've got maybe the best running back in college football. But defensively, they haven't stopped a whole lot of people consistently. And offensively, 3rd and 1, you would like to think you can just pound that in there between the tackles and get your couple of yards, but they haven't been able to do it very often. So that's the battle that they need to row the boat to physicality in Chapel Hill. That's the boat they need to row. I've always liked the fight and flex. It's been hot and cold. Minnesota's a tough job. It just is. I thought he would have landed a bigger job by now, and maybe that window is come and gone. I don't know, but I'll take the Tar Heels on the road in that one.
Yeah, Minnesota's a tough job, and they have money. I think he's 80 and 56 in his coaching career. Western Michigan and Minnesota, not exactly powerhouses.
No.
Number 3.
Do you think it is fair? And ESPN had a big article on Ohio State's or maybe it was the Athletic, Ohio State's $20 million offseason. That's the number now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's fair that Ryan Day could get fired if he doesn't win a national championship?
I think it's fair he will get fired if he doesn't beat Michigan. I don't think he should be fired if they get to the playoff, win a couple of games, but don't win at all, say lose to a Georgia or an Oregon. No, I don't think that's fair. But he has to beat Michigan. You simply cannot lose 4 in a row to the Maize and Blue. And not with all the money they've pumped in there. Not with all the talent that he's routinely had before this offseason where they decided to go scorched earth, finances be gone, budget be gone. No, he has to win that game, and I think he will. He has to get to the playoff, and I think he will. I can't say he has to win the national title or you're fired. I'm sure a lot of the fans feel that way, JC. I know what you're thinking. I'm sure if I went to scarletandgray.com, I don't even know if that's a thing. The message boards would say, if not now, then we need to make a change. And I don't know who the hell they'd hire. But, yeah, I think bottom line is beat Michigan, get to a playoff, have a respectable playoff, and all will be good in the world again for Ryan Day. But right now, it's tenuous.
Number 4.
All right. Connor Stallions is in the news again.
Yeah.
And this documentary hit. I think the guy's a liar. And I think
no,
I really honestly do. I don't think this guy.
You think he lacks integrity? I can't believe it.
I'm not coming down on Michigan fans or their program, and I certainly I kind of like that Jim Harbaugh's told the NCAA to go F themselves. I like that about Harbaugh. I have nothing against Michigan. I mean, I have some opinions as to like if this really happened, why the NCAA didn't do anything about it when they'll go ban other teams. I think they banned Missouri from a bowl a couple of years ago for like illegal tutoring or some bull crap like that.
Yeah.
Are situations like Connor Stallions, in your opinion, And I kind of lump him in with things like Baby Gronk. It's kind of just theater of the absurd, or Tiger King. That if you want to go non-football, are situations like that good or bad for the game?
You mean the scandal itself?
No, just the hype that it's getting and the fact this guy's all of a sudden a celebrity and in the news.
By the way, where would we all be during COVID without Tiger King?
I know.
Tiger King's, you got to remember, that's when
necessary.
That's when Facebook was telling you that, you couldn't believe any other theory than the one put forward. Now, of course, Zuckerberg's apologizing. That's when a lot of the people that covered college football were telling you what you should and shouldn't do with COVID as if they had a clue. But I don't know if the scandal is good for college football, JC. I mean, I haven't seen the documentary. Have you seen the doc yet? It's on Netflix right now.
I
right?
know. I didn't catch it. It's supposed to be. Josh Pate had a tweet on it earlier. He said it was fire.
Was it really? Good. I saw the Steve McNair one was fire.
I did read an article where he was quoted and they pulled, he's trying to get a job at high school football in Michigan. Actually, a school finally did hire him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, I don't know. So one school was going to hire him. Both these schools were not very, very good. And the school board and the principal and all these people were like, nah, we don't think you should. So he went crazy on it. There was and this guy actually did write a manifesto, and they talked about the manifesto being a plan for Michigan to win. It was actually a plan for him to take over the program. Like a dastardly, here, and I don't know when he put the knife in this manifesto, put the knife in Harbaugh, or if that was just assumed, or whoever the coach is. But I think this guy, I think think it's fascinating. It's entertaining. I'm going to watch the documentary, and I'm not going to be able to quit watching it.
You need to watch the McNair one too.
But
people forget how good he was at Alcorn State
and how crazy his.
Let that be a lesson, man.
There you go.
Let that be. It ain't worth it.
There you go. Happened in Nashville too, where I lived 7 years.
Happened right in the Music City. Dave and Buster's.
I'm just like, with all the stuff going on in college football that makes it look like a 3-ring circus to outsiders. And I'm talking about people outside of America. And I'll add this. Unfortunately, a young man passed away after suffering an injury on the field in Alabama. And my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And, I don't know the details as to how it happened. I do know it is a dangerous game. I mean, that's the truth. But you have these two people in Canada, these two professors that are writing a book about the end of college football and trying to kill it. And then you read more about them, and they're like experts in Marxist theory and things like that. And then you look at them and you're like, well, no wonder these guys don't like football. I mean, it's a total agenda driven thing. I think you give a lot of ammo to people like that who are they're just not ever going to like football or really much of anything masculine, in my opinion. When you prop a Connor Stallions up on a pedestal, because it makes it part of this crazy, you already got the portal. You already got it. The sport seems out of control. And now you got Connor Stallions up on a pedestal, and the picture of him on another team, a third party sidelines. And I don't understand why they didn't get in trouble. Scouting, in person, watching. I mean, come on, man. So anyway,
look, the only good thing to come out of that whole thing, it sped up the process of, we now have the helmet communication. So your quarterback's got it on offense, whatever player you want on defense. Although, as a former SEC quarterback pointed out to me last week, he's like, don't overestimate this. Like, very few teams huddle anymore. So you call it in, and basically you're still giving hand signals after, pre-snap. You're sitting there in the shotgun or whatever formation you're in, but very few teams actually huddle. But it certainly should help, and it should prevent any sign stealing from happening again. The sad thing about all that is I think Michigan was good enough to win the national title without it. I think that silliness that Harbaugh did, it's like, you don't need to do it, bro. Like, you're already loaded.
I think my theory, and it's a theory, Mike, is that he probably really did not know how Stallions was doing it. And Stallions had the advantage of, I guess repetition. He probably just thought, oh, this guy's really good at watching other teams' signals. And look, I'm going to tell you this right now. Other programs have guys like that.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they sit there and because stealing signals is not illegal. And I think helmet communication is going to be interesting to see how the signal stealers perform this year. Are they really as good coordinators as we all thought, or are they going to start gambling wrong? Most of the time it's on defense too. I mean, offense, they're too busy trying to get the dang play in.
Right.
I think to steal defensive signals. But anyway, on to number 5.
Number 4. Number 5.
All right, less topical this one. It's just straight up. Will Clemson cover the 13.5 against Georgia?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say they're going to keep it within the number, but I don't see many scenarios where Clemson wins the game. That's just a high number. It's week 1. Georgia did lose a lot of talent from that team a year ago. I mean, Carson Beck lost the top tight end in college football, one of the best receivers in college football in McConkey. The offensive line is stout, and the defense will be loaded as it always is at Georgia, which is basically Nick Saban's Alabama 2.0 is what you're looking at in Athens right now. But this is a put up or shut up game for Clemson to kind of prove that they're still a relevant contender for high prizes, and for that matter, it's big for the ACC. If Clemson gets waxed against Georgia, and Miami goes down in the swamp, and Florida State already lost to Georgia Tech, this is not exactly a banner opening to the season for the Atlantic Coast Conference if all those things happen. Oh, by the way, SMU almost lost to Nevada as like a 27-point favorite. This would not be a great 8 days for the new conference of champions and bi-coastal elites.
And then people are going to tune in for that juggernaut, the BC FSU game. I mean, that's like a rocket watching a train wreck. I tell you what, I want to see that. I don't know what the number is going to be on that, but I may take Boston College, man. I mean, I just
well, what about the game you proposed?
I think I'm with you. I think Clemson will cover. I think when especially if Trevor Etienne is suspended, which Kirby Smart has not confirmed nor denied, I personally think that's a lot of speculation, and Kirby's probably going to suspend some of those guys for
Samford.
Yeah, that'll be that. But if he doesn't play, and then Rock Robinson is hurt, another back they have, they're suddenly very thin at running back. Mike Bobo likes to pound the ball. I'm sorry to Jesse Palmer because I like him and I love Joe Tessitore, and I thought the broadcast was really good. And apologies to Nick Saban, the GOAT as well. But Clemson has the best D-line in the ACC. It always has. It's never been Florida State.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Clemson's got studs up front.
Yeah. From Pete Thamel on, there were several people that said Florida State has the best defensive line in the country, not the ACC, in the country. Obviously,
how about no?
Yeah, how about negative? All right, that does it for the JC5. Our partner in crime, Tim Brando. You know him, you love him, of Fox Sports, a friend of the family here on JC and Morgan. He joins us via Louisiana on a Zoom in the, as he would call it, the Chateau Brando, I believe is the term he likes to use. More JC and Morgan coming up.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
Here's JC and Morgan.
Hi, we welcome you back, JC and Morgan, episode number 251, if you were scoring at home. And this is being recorded. Some of you tune in live. I know a lot of you can't necessarily catch it live, so you listen later on. But we'll get back into our Monday routine starting next week. So every Monday around 9:30, if you want to tune in live, we'd love to have you. Get an early crack on what just happened in the previous weekend in college football. So this might be our last Tuesday episode for a while.
Yeah, we kind of, during basketball especially, Mike's on the road, and sometimes football, baseball, and then sometimes if I go out of town on the weekends, Mondays are hard for me to hit if I'm traveling, especially on a Sunday night or early Monday morning. But so we try to be consistent. I love the Monday slot because we get right to it. We jump in and get it and talk about the weekend and stuff. It's almost like a rapid reaction type of show, and then we touch on the coming week. But that'll be for those that are on the Chief app in South Carolina that tune into the Gamecock show. We will kind of lead into that on Mondays. So get up bright and early Monday and rock and roll with your college football rewind with JC and Morgan.
That's right. And of course, other shows on the Chief Sports app as well. We invite all of you as we continue to cast a wider and wider net of programs on that app, kind of local shows with particular fan bases. This one, of course, a national show, and we cover the gamut here, including, as we wait on Timmy B, Group 5 John, G5 John, who says he went over the results, Montana State over New Mexico. He reminded us the New Mexico head coach is Bronco Mendenhall. I want to ask Timmy B about Bronco because his path to New Mexico is amazing to me. I remember having him on a Friday night game at Virginia, and he had everything rolling. I thought he did a fairly good job at BYU, and then all of a sudden, he just quit. So I want to know what he found out about that. SMU beat Nevada. He says top 5 games to keep an eye on for week 1 with a G5 team. Number 5, Fresno State at Michigan. Michigan, a 21.5-point favorite. A lot of people still trying to figure out what is Michigan really going to look like. They lost a ton, including Harbaugh. Number 4, Boise State at Georgia Southern. We know Boise announced their starting quarterback, Maddox Matson, not Malachi Nelson. And Georgia Southern, beautiful little village over there. JC, if you haven't been to that campus, it's an interesting spot. Good golf over there, by the way. Number 3, Wyoming at Arizona State. Arizona State's only a 6.5-point favorite against Wyoming.
They're not supposed to be good at all. Poor Kenny Dillingham. That job is a good job. It's just they've had a lot of problems, thanks in no small part to a school president and, quite frankly, an athletic director that they had that was just out in left field somewhere.
Number 2, UNLV at Houston. Houston of the Big 12, UNLV of course, the Mountain West. Houston's only a 2-point favorite in that game.
Barry Odom. Now, his quarterback, who I bet he feels like a horse's patoot now because he transferred to Southern Cal and lost the job. Didn't win the job, so he's not starting. He was awesome last year. I think they're going to replace him, though. I like their offense, and Barry Odom's good at coaching defense. I think Barry Odom's where he needs to be at a place like this. Eventually, he'll get another shot at the Power 5. I'd actually keep an eye on the Arkansas job if it opens up for Barry Odom. However, which would be kind of intriguing, but on the flip side, Houston's going through some struggles right now, but Willie Fritz, he's a more with less guy, and that I think they will be very well coached and, pretty doggone tough. So that'll be a very good game. I'm a closet UNLV fan anyway. So
we've seen the hats,
the
visors.
Rebels from back in the day. So
you're the ghost of Randall Cunningham. And number 1, he has Miami of Ohio at Northwestern. Northwestern only a 3-point favorite in that ball game, right in your neck of the woods, JC, Chi-Town.
Yeah, the Miami of Ohio coach Chuck Martin's become like everybody's hero since he just went off about Alabama stealing his kicker. He kind of sounded a little like Bobby Knight. He's like, "You media people, just curious to see the digs at Northwestern with them playing kind of in some temporary bleachers with if somebody shanks a punt, Mike, and it's real windy and the wind's blowing out toward the lake, that ball's going in Lake Michigan. It's right there. You got to go Google it, dude. It's
I've seen it.
They didn't even decide to do this until like March. They were like, they had an article in the Tribune, like, we don't know where we're going to play this year. We got one game at Wrigley. They got one game at a soccer stadium where they have concerts kind of near the Buddhist temple where my wife's parents go, kind of in a suburb. But then they're like, we have no idea. Could you imagine an SEC football? And they're in the Big Ten, right? Could you imagine a program that cares going, not sure where we're going to play this year in March?
Yeah.
That's usually when I got my ticket. I got my season tickets today. And Northwestern's just like, well, we're just going to figure it out later.
Pat Fitzgerald had that thing rocking as much as it possibly could for a while.
The new guy, though, won 8 last year?
Yeah, that's true. I thought he did one of the best coaching jobs in college football last year.
Oh, yeah. One of these stupid coaching rankings lists had him like the 14th best coach in the Big Ten.
Well, clearly,
they had to put their buddies up there.
Coach Prime going 4-8. You got to put him number 1.
Oh,
speaking of which, Group 5 John adds the bonus game, even though North Dakota State is FCS. Looking forward to seeing them play at Colorado. That's a Thursday night. Colorado a 10-point favorite. I would add one other note. They're not G5, they're not P4, but UConn still flirting with the Big 12, or the Big 12 is recruiting UConn. I don't know how much UConn. I know your thoughts on this. I think a lot of UConn fans are saying just leave well alone. The Big East will be a basketball power and we'll figure it out as a football indie. But they're still being courted. The Big 12 is going to add some teams. They're not done. So that's where that is going on right now.
Or I'd wait for some schools to leave the ACC, Mike.
Well, yeah. That's certainly on the table.
Yeah.
That's absolutely on the table. I don't know if Florida State fans are more worried about leaving the ACC or how their team's going to look after what happened on Saturday. We know how this man looks. Tim Brando, a frequent guest here on JC and Morgan. Look at that. The camera is sharp. The background is slick. From Louisiana, where he probably just finished the back nine. It's you know him, you love him. Timmy B joining us. How are you, sir?
I wish I could say I just finished the back nine, but they're in mothballs now, fellas. I'll probably get out on a Monday or a Tuesday in a couple of weeks once we get maybe past September the 13th. Let the fall take over. Let the leaves begin to turn just a little, even down here. But It's gosh, we've already got one in the books, and we're getting ready to go to Camp Randall for Friday night at Western Michigan. Well, actually, Western Michigan going in to play Wisconsin's for week one. We had a doozy for week 0, and oh, by the way, a crash and burn audio goes berserk after 2 minutes on the air.
I watched. I felt for you, man. I've been there.
I'm calling the game with stick mics the whole way. Couldn't hear my producer until the first 2-minute timeout.
Yes,
that I had experienced in college football. But you learn a lot about your new partner when you're under that kind of duress. And I was really impressed with Devin Gardner in his debut. And we had we had a full truck, producer, director, everybody there, but we had some new audio equipment, and I guess it was too much for the facilities. They had Wi-Fi issues. I found out the folks from Montana State had issues as well. They couldn't get Wi-Fi, so they were doing the call on the phone on radio until they got to the latter stages of the second quarter. So your usual gremlins for the first game of the season were there, but the game carried the way, and the game was awesome. The fourth quarter was incredible. If you were looking, and the ratings on the game were pretty good. I think what happened with a lot of just college football nerds was after the Florida State Georgia Tech game ended, people were starving for another game, so they went and found whatever they could find, wherever they could find it. And our game was available, and it was I thought it was going to be a competitive game. Hey, Montana State was a 13.5-point favorite. I mean, an FCS team, and they had to come from 17 down to win it, and did so with 10 seconds left. So it was fun.
I loaded up on the points in that one because I think it got lost that Montana State's coach went to Nevada, so I also took Nevada. And then Bronco Mendenhall is now the coach at New Mexico. Yep. I caught the game. I thought you called it pretty well. Devin Gardner is I think getting old, Tim. Covered him as a recruit out of high school in Detroit. Loved him. I think I was the highest one on him. I think I definitely rated him 5 stars. I always thought he was like big and talented and a smart individual. Yeah. So I'm glad you guys got along with your first. But I thought I tuned in to check the score, and then I kept it there because Timmy B was calling it, and it was a heck of a ball game. Those defensive touchdowns were awesome to see early. So
what's interesting about those games you mentioned the ratings.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the privilege of doing some pretty good games. We're not getting the Chris Fowler, Gus Johnson games. But some pretty good games in the SEC and other leagues. But the games that I have the most people blowing up my phone, I remember doing a Nevada game late at night because it was Colin Kaepernick, and we wanted to cover a Colin Kaepernick because he was a sensation at Nevada. People, before he became the politician or whatever he is now, he was phenomenal to watch. And so we did a game on like ESPN2, and because it was 9:30 Eastern time kick.
Yeah.
It was unopposed, so we had a ton of people watching. I've done Friday night games. Again, high ratings. They're not the best games ordinarily, but they're unopposed. And so I knew your game was going to have a lot of eyeballs because people like JC and I, we were both talking about it before that weekend. Yeah. All right, we're all in on Georgia Tech, Florida State. Then what? Where are we going? And your game was right there. So I'm like, okay, I'll go into this. And I do. So my point is that sometimes the ratings, it's not the biggest games that get the highest ratings. Yeah. It's the windows, right? And you guys had a nice window.
Yeah, we did. And by the way, speaking of Kaepernick, that was at the height of Peterson being at Boise State. My fly in the ointment.
Yes.
In my days in the studio at CBS, and it was Kaepernick's team that ultimately did in Boise State in a year when they would have definitely been in the BCS championship had they won out, and they lost that game. Tessitore should give some money to the Mountain West because those Friday night games and Thursday night games that he did, propelled his career. I mean, there were unbelievable Boise State games, if you recall, in the Mountain West back then when Kaepernick was there, and then Peterson had those incredible teams that were on the cusp of getting in because they would play somebody really good non-conference, win the game, okay, which would jettison them in the computers. The computers loved Boise because they would take on tough opposition and sometimes win those games. And when they did in the old BCS criteria, they had a shot, a real shot.
That was the year they beat Georgia, I think, in the opener
that's right.
at the Dome.
Sure did.
And then that was 2011.
Yep,
and
right.
Georgia ended up, they lost to Boise, they lost to South Carolina in that Melvin Ingram game the following week, and then they won out until then they played that LSU team in the SEC championship game and got thumped. But that opener against Georgia was something. I think 2 touchdowns. They beat them by 2 touchdowns in the Dome. So,
right.
It's funny we're talking about those Boise teams. You got the Chris Alt Nevada era, the pistol. I remember I had to watch tape and learn exactly what the pistol was and why it was so effective. But you had those programs, the fly in the ointment, to use your term. I wonder, Timmy, if we're going to lose a lot of that. Now, we're going to get the automatic bid, and we talk about this. We got a listener, G5 John, who every week gives us an update on his top teams that are not in the Power Four, and we give it its due. But in terms of a G5 type team that's truly a threat to even make it, say, to the semis, that financial gap, I think, is so mammoth now. It wasn't like that when Boise State beat Georgia. There was a gap. The SEC had made more money, and that Georgia made more money in Boise, but nothing like what we have today.
No, but I will say this, Mike. It's still football, and it's still about matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And Boise's got a quarterback that I saw as a freshman play for the Mountain West title, lost the game to Fresno State with Hainer and those guys. But he is a stud, and he's very athletic, and they're going to be tough to beat. I've got that's my team this year is Boise State to go through the Mountain West, which is a good league. Fresno's good. So I would say the Mountain West and the Sun Belt are the 2 top non-Power 4 conference leagues. Liberty has the easiest road to being undefeated. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Boise State is a far more – they still are a very athletic team. They get quality players there. They just have had they've had a coaching carousel of late and some drama, which I think has been rectified post Chris Peterson. But here's the thing: we're still going to have, even with that disparity that you're talking about, Big Ten and SEC making so much more money than even the Big 12 and the ACC. The issue here is going to be, and I'm going to throw this out there, and it's probably going to piss off some of my colleagues, but I'll just say it. We have a deep state media taking place in college football that's very similar to what we see in politics now, where we have surrogates for the big boys taking care of the big boys and already saying things like, well, the Big 12 isn't really deep, it's wide. What the hell was Reese Davis talking about when he said it wasn't deep in the Big 12? Big 12 is the deepest conference in America. It's the most competitive in America. There are many as 7 teams. I think there are as many as 7 teams in that league that could potentially win that. And yet he had a problem. The host of College Game Day, whom I respect, by the way, had a problem saying the league is deep and highly competitive. Deep somehow is not, they're not worthy of saying that. Basically what they're setting up a scenario whereby the champion is going to have 3 losses and the second place team, no matter who it is, would have no shot of getting in. So we clear the way. And by the way, if you look at my preseason top 15, which I put out a couple of weeks ago, which is a predicted finish, not where teams, in my view, are projected to start. I don't believe in starting grids. But if you look at my preseason top 15, I have 5 SEC teams getting in. Okay, I do. So I respect the Southeastern Conference. All right. People that think I'm a Benedict Arnold because I left the league, no longer covering it with CBS back in 2013 and went to Fox. No, I have great respect for the Southeastern Conference. But the truth is, there are a couple of teams in that league that have their schedules are so easy. I can't look at Missouri and not say they're going to be propped up. They are. So I've got them in. All right. Ole Miss is in. Georgia is in. Bama, in my opinion, can lose 3 and still be in. Okay. And and Texas, in my view, might be the best team, and they've lost a couple of offensive linemen. So I've got those 5 teams in. So I haven't even gotten to Tennessee or LSU or any of those teams. But we're going to have a team that has 2 losses or 1 loss in either the Big 12 or the ACC. But if they're not the champions, they're not going to get in. If they're not the champions of their league, they're not going to get in. And the reason for it, and I'm going to go back to the end of last year with the Florida State debacle. Nothing as egregious as what happened to Florida State will happen now. But for those of us that really follow college football and know how good some of these teams are and the quality of depth in these leagues, we know that there's going to be a team, whether it's Kansas State or Kansas or Oklahoma State or whoever it is, that finishes second to Utah, who I have winning the Big 12 this year. They're not going to get in, okay? But we will have a 3-loss team, maybe 2 3-loss teams from either the SEC or the Big 10 get in. So, and I'm telling you, with these nebulous rules that playoff still has, okay, other than having to give you a group of 5 team, which they have to do, and other than giving an automatic bid to the conference champion regardless, it's all about the SEC and the Big 10, and you have a cooperative media. And now, because ESPN owns the whole thing, they own the whole thing, and the mouthpiece of game day is there, they can do what they did for Sankey in that last game day and do a 45-minute soliloquy on how this or that team deserves to be in Alabama a year ago. Greg Sankey and those guys in Herb Street, they weren't talking to the masses. They were talking right to that committee room. And by God, Florida State got left out. You don't you don't think that'll happen to a 1 or 2 loss team in the ACC or the Big 12 this year?
I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible the Big 12 and the ACC could both get one. Yeah, especially if Miami loses to Florida. But
right.
And you were very fair in what you just said, because you pointed out the Big 10, which is obviously basically a Fox deal now. The Big 12 is shared, for those that don't know, with ESPN and Fox. Right. So it's not as if one network is more interested in the Big 12 than the other. They're both.
Where I work has nothing to do.
I understand. But here's what I would say on the SEC point, and maybe call me an SEC homer a little bit. It's okay. I've been called worse. The Big 10 has Tony Petitti, who is, right up there. Like if there's
as strong as it gets, absolutely.
And Fox has made tremendous strides with their own pregame show, and they've got their big noon kickoff. And so it's not as if they're a voiceless entity either, right? You've got the 2 big families. I think your bigger point is, once you get past that cabal of those 2 leagues, the other ones are certainly, and this was where I go back to the money, follow the money.
Right.
The Big 12 and the ACC, yes, they are power conferences, but they are not playing on a level playing field with the SEC and the Big 10.
No, they aren't. And again, when I go back to this, and I'm being critical, I know, of colleagues that I respect, but I'm sorry. Herbie lost me last year. I think his credibility took a real hit. Playing ball with the coaches that he really favors, like the greasing of Dabo's ego was taking place at the end of that show in Dublin the other day too. It happens. It happens. You've got relationships, and it goes overboard. And you know what? He's to a point now he can say whatever he wants, and no one will call him on it. I will. Okay, I will. And I don't like somebody substituting a complimentary descriptive word, which is deep, which the Big 12 is. You're not going to have bad games in that league. They're going to be very competitive. You'll have some bad games in the SEC. You'll have some stinkers in the Big 10. You'll be hard-pressed to find them. Look, UCF has a great new quarterback. KJ Jefferson's going to make a difference there. It's not going to be easy to win there. Avery Johnson is a stud, 5-star at Kansas State. That game with Arizona we've got on Friday the 13th is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get there for that one. Kansas with Jalen Daniels is a factor. But they're going to spend on 3 hours, 2.5 hours talking about the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten. And by the way, these shows are bottom line for the most part. They're pep rallies. They're on site and they're pep rallies for the big boys. And
I will say this. To go back to and again, this is not me. Reese Davis. I don't know Reese that well. We've met at some seminars, and I've had him on another show a while back. He's a super guy, as you know. And I think
he's been a great warrior for the network.
Absolutely, and I think he's outstanding at what he does. I mean, I thought Fowler was really good. I think Reese is just as good. But I think his point on because I caught that too. And I had to scratch my head for a second. The difference between depth and wide. Here's how I interpret it.
Made a big difference in my mind.
Well, this is what we love about you. You bring the fire. How I interpreted that was what makes the Big 12 so exciting this year. And JC can tell you, I've been a Big 12 proponent. People know my SEC ties. I did Big 12 games for 4 years on Fox and loved every minute of it. Been to all those. Been to Ames, Iowa. Been to Manhattan. Been to Waco, and I loved it. And they're passionate about college football. But what makes it so competitive and exciting this year, which is one way to pump it up, is because they don't have a dominating team. Now, maybe Utah becomes that, but they don't have an Ohio State.
No.
They don't have a Georgia. So more teams you cast a wider net of teams that can win the league. That makes it fascinating, but you don't have the juggernaut at the top.
No, and what else? There's another word for what you're talking about.
I'm not going to use the P word. I'm not saying parody, if that's what you mean.
No. They don't have a blue blood.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay.
Oh, there is no brand. Yeah. The brand, there's no brand.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you don't have a blue, and that's what, I'll listen. I'll loop our Big Noon show into this, and I have great respect for Stoner and all those guys, but they're going to talk about the brands.
Sure,
they are. They're going to talk about the brands, and they're really going to talk a lot about the game. The Big Noon show is a 2-hour show, and they're basically, I think their intent is to just fire people up for the Big Noon game.
No question.
And they do a hell of a job with that. Game Day tries to go with a broader landscape, and oh, by the way, they've had a 30-plus year. Maybe 30. Let's see. When did I start that? 87. Yeah. So they've had about a 30-year head start on Big Noon. Okay. So the audience is larger, and their approach is to a grander landscape than Fox's, in my view. And I've been in the business a while, and I think I can say that and not get any trouble with my my bosses. But the bottom line is, blue bloods are the ones that are always discussed. Utah's in the Mountain Time Zone, and I remember Bino used to always say, nobody cares about the Mountain Time Zone, Jimmy. And there's such truth to that. Kansas State's in mini Manhattan, not the real Manhattan. So not only do you not have blue bloods in the league, you don't have big markets.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yep. I mean, if you were just looking for market value in blue bloods, everyone should be, if it was all about just TV, you'd be marketing Dion, who's made a fool out of himself in the offseason and changed the narrative on his own in a negative way.
Right.
But the bottom line is that Denver market is one of the bigger ones that they've got now. And that's part of the issue that your mark is facing. It's one of the reasons he's working so hard to get Connecticut. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think from a football standpoint, it could really make a difference for that league if he had someone in that area to garner more households. And listen, it's not like UConn football is UConn basketball. I think we both know they're different from a marketing and branding standpoint. But the issue here is if we can't say anymore that the media is fairly covering the landscape of college football, because it's not. We don't talk about all the matchups the way the matchups should be discussed, and largely it's because there are games on in every time zone, and there is, without question, when it comes to opinion time, okay, well, the committee's got to get the 12 best. Well, the 12 best, I mean, and now with Nick Saban in there saying, well, when you look at those schedules, a 9-3 in this league versus an 11-1 in this one, you know what? That's right, Nick, and you are the GOAT. but who the hell else gets away with playing FCS opposition? And by God, you did, in late November, and no one says a damn thing about it. It's just completely dusted under the rug. That's grand larceny in my mind. The fact that the SEC has gotten away with this crap and no one's called them on it is yet another example of how the media will sometimes coerce and it's no different than in politics. We see some in mainstream media who have now become surrogates for this or that party. And now we're seeing some in our profession, okay, where we really ought to be just having fun and covering the sport, who have become surrogates for the teams that, from their perspective, is better in their world, more fun for them. Herb Street made it clear. He wanted Alabama come hell or high water last year, not Florida State. Period. End of story. And the fact is, it was never reported, but true. Had Texas not beaten Alabama, Alabama would not have gotten in. The only way they got in was because Georgia screwed up and lost the SEC title game. If Georgia had won that game, Florida State would have been in. But because Alabama won against Georgia, they had to take Texas, and that screwed Florida State.
But here's the good news.
No one on that committee wanted to admit to that. But I talked to people anonymously that were in that room, and that was the dilemma. Did the media report it? Hell no. Absolutely not. Under no circumstances would they.
Here's the good news. We're not going to worry about that this year. I'd rather have an argument over who's 12 versus 13
Sure.
for 4 versus 5.
Correct. But guess what? Corruption is still there. And corruption will take place. It won't be as egregious, and only the football nerds will know or care. But I'm telling you, a one-loss team out of either the ACC or the Big 12, potentially, okay, could happen. Now, they're thinking everybody's going to lose. It's too competitive. Champion will probably have 3 losses. That was the scenario Herb Street painted on the show. I watched the show very closely. I did. And I'm telling you, that's part of it. And I've been in the business, and I know that's part of it.
I don't see 3 losses on Ohio State's schedule. I'm sorry.
No. I'm talking Big 12.
He's talking.
Just the Big 12. I don't know about that, Tim. Here's what I love about the Big 12. I've been making notes.
Counting on it. They're counting on it. But that's why I think it's going to be awful if a 1 or 2 loss team that's really good played a competitive schedule, and that league is competitive. The metrics are all with SEC and all with Big 10. So I just think if you're not Utah or K-State and you don't win it, you're not going to get in it.
Every single program in that league at some point has had success and been close to a national title.
Oklahoma State.
Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Houston under Tom Herman almost went to the BCS one year, did get to the Peach Bowl. West Virginia is the number 25 winningest program in the history of college football. Colorado's won before. Arizona State's a sleeping giant. Texas Tech Baylor and TCU both should have been in the first college football playoff.
No doubt about it.
UCF probably has more upside than any program in the country. Cincinnati and TCU are the 2 teams from the group of, or TCU was not a group of 5 team when they made it, but they've crashed the party. I mean, every team here has been good at one point or another. I mean, Iowa State's played for a Big 12.
Can we pivot from the Big 12 for just a second?
Sure. Yeah. Because I got one more thing about Liberty.
I'm sorry,
I don't think Liberty needs to get in
for you, Mike, but I'm telling you, I see the writing on the wall about what the narrative will be this year, and it's going to be the same damn thing, but we're going to be arguing over a 9-3 team, whether it's Penn State in the Big 10 or Alabama in the SEC getting in over a 1 or 2 loss quality team from the Big 12.
I get all that, but
Liberty why would Liberty get in at 12-0 over a 12-1 Memphis?
Because they're guaranteed as a group of 5. That's why.
But why not take the 1-loss Mountain West champion?
They built it in. That's the way that. And by the way, other than those little changes, the criteria for getting in. What about having just some accomplishments? We still have nebulous criteria, which allows the committee to gerrymander it any way they want. And I don't care what anybody says. They are influenced by who?
No, but
the talking heads that are most influential in our business.
We're straying. JC's saying, and I agree with him, 2 Group 5 teams. Memphis with a much better schedule than Liberty at 12-1 versus
Oh,
Liberty. You
yeah.
got to go Memphis there, don't you?
Well, sure. And by the way, the point I'm trying to make about the Big 12 would also, I'll move the group of 5 conferences into there. Absolutely, without question. I think Boise State's got a much tougher schedule. The Mountain West is good.
Absolutely.
I think that teams like last year, SMU should have gone rather than Liberty.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah, that was what I was saying. I didn't understand it's like some schools, they just get automatically rewarded for being undefeated, and then others do not.
Yeah.
So
that's the old school coaching. If they're 12-0 and they're 11-1, you got to take the 12-0.
I'll never understand Liberty going, but then they use that argument against Florida State.
Exactly.
State,
what hypocrites. What hypocrites.
Yeah.
It worked for Liberty, but it didn't work for Florida State.
It does not. Different parameter. By the way, Ashton Jeanty, since we keep talking Boise State, that he is a stud running back that you'll get to know.
Woo.
And he's one of the few guys, like nowadays, like a Kellen Moore never would have been at Boise State as long as somebody in the portal would have offered him $1.2 million and he'd be gone. That's just, unfortunately, that's why it sucks to be a successful coach of a Group 5 team, because you develop these kids that were diamonds in the rough in recruiting. You help turn them into NFL prospects, and before they're draft eligible, somebody comes in there, poof, and offers a pile of cash, and they wind up bolting.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, because we're sitting here, we're talking on. Great thing about having you on, just like if it's Luganville or Josh Pate or some of the other regulars, we never know what direction it's going. This is we don't come in with a format. This is not like doing a studio show that you're used to. Everything is so structured, and we just kind of go with it. So I think you'll agree with this, because you're a long time, and I've always agreed with you on this, an expansionist, to use a term by our friends Chris Childer and Rick Neuheisel. So we finally got it. Right. I made a pact, Tim, with myself, because I can complain about it as much as the next guy. I made a pact that if we were going to get, I would have been happy with 8, but great, 12, going to be 14. And as you've said all along, it's going to be 16. And you're probably right.
In the end. Yeah.
But I made a pact that if we got to this point and I could find in a mid-November, turning on a game on a Saturday where it used to be only 6 teams were still left in the hunt, and now there's 26.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
I wasn't going to complain about much anymore, because this, to me, with all the things we've had to wrap our head around, with the massive changes in this sport, with NIL and the portal and everything else, let's not lose sight of the fact this is going to be, for me, one of the most exciting regular seasons of my lifetime because of an expanded playoff. Yeah. So let's embrace that, shall we?
Let's absolutely. I'm all in on that, but you know what? It's early, and I watched that show. And
you're still fired up about the Week 0 pregame show.
Yeah, I am. I can see the writing on the wall.
All right, so if Joel Klatt starts to lean a little Big Ten this year, are we going to get angry?
Joel pisses me off sometimes too.
Okay, good.
I mean, he still believes, and he still believes that there are certain teams that are gonna just automatically have this incredible year, and they're brands. They're brands. He's a brand guy. And I think just there's a feeling, I've always had this, that those schools that are putting their jock straps on just like everybody else, and now it is about access, that I'm excited about it. Absolutely. And during the course of the season, and I promise the next time I come back, when you guys have me back, when the season's maybe a quarter through, or we're getting close to the halfway point, maybe around that early to mid-October period, right? When we get to that point, I'm going to be just loving it, because these games are taking on so much more meaning. Like that Oregon-Ohio State game is October the 12th. I think that game is huge, and I absolutely believe Oregon will win that game in Eugene, no matter how good Ohio State looks out of the gates, okay? Now, Ohio State won't be done. They'll still be very much a factor. But that's where Joel loses me a lot of times, when he's like, well, I just don't see Ohio State not having – listen, I don't know yeah, they're good. They've got great personnel, and Will Howard is going to be throwing and handing off to a bunch of first-round draft picks. And that should make him even better than he was when he was a junior and finally got the starting job and was moving on pretty well at Kansas State, okay? But I'm just not going to hand it to Ohio State because they're the Buckeyes. I'm just not going to hand it to them.
Right.
And I think that Ohio State, just like Alabama, just like Georgia, just like you name the brands, they are given by the experts these here's a get out of jail free card no matter how bad things are for you early. Just the way the game is portrayed by so many in our business. And I know those guys played and I didn't, but I think if we've got 12 teams in and we've created more access, let's take a look at how each team is performing as they move forward. Like, I am so fired up to watch Florida and Miami this coming Saturday after what happened to Florida State. My game is on Friday, and I'm getting home from Madison before noon. So I won't have to watch either one of the pregame shows, so I'll be in a much happier mood, I'm sure. But I can't wait to watch those games, Mike, because I think Miami could send a strong message to the ACC and to their friends at Florida State, as well as Florida, because Cam Ward is the goods. I think he is that's why I have Miami from the ACC winning the league. I think he's a transformational quarterback. I saw him at Kent Word, and I saw him at Wazoo, and I think he's going to be just a complete difference maker. And I think Florida's going to take a hit this coming Saturday from them.
They hadn't had a guy like that in a long time, man.
No,
maybe ever. Cam Ward's really, really good.
Well, they thought Van Dyke was going to be their stud, and I don't know what happened to him. And of course,
I'm going to see him on Friday. I'm going to see him on Friday.
You're going to see him firsthand at Wisconsin. Yeah, I mean, he had some injuries, but there was a descent there that was kind of unexplainable. You mentioned brands. Well, I think some people probably take joy in knowing that brands can fall. Florida State, Miami have all fallen. Nebraska has fallen. There was a time Texas was fallen and for whatever reason couldn't get up. They seem to have solved some of those issues. It's a lot harder to get to the top and stay there.
Sure it is.
And so I do think we're certainly in a haves-nots war, but that's always been the case in college football.
Yeah, it has been.
Like in 100 years.
But now we've got greater access. Okay.
Right.
And because, and this is to some extent the fault of the ACC and the Big 12 leadership, because they accepted the parameters of this new expansion. Okay. And the Big 10 and the SEC get more money no matter who's in the playoff. They just do. They got a chance to get, because of the way the structure is of the rules, which are so vague, they have a better chance to get, a handful of teams in, which is what I predicted the SEC get 5 teams in. And when people say from the Southeastern Conference, or even those that cover it, well, our league is so good and the competition is so great, that Missouri schedule, and by the way, I love them. I love the quarterback. I love LeVar Burton. That is as easy a schedule as you can possibly find for a power league team. Okay, it just is. And they're not going to pay a price for a weak schedule because they're in the Southeastern Conference. But other teams that are really good teams that maybe have a little bit of a break, Iowa, by the way, same story as Missouri. Look at Iowa's schedule.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Of cake, an absolute piece of cake.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that McNamara will finish the season as the quarterback. He's coming back after the injury. I'm told, my buddy Devin told me that they've got a kid that's behind him that could probably replace him by midseason. And Devin Gardner keeps up with a lot of that talent that's come from the Big Ten area and gone to other schools besides Michigan. So Iowa could be 110th as opposed to 134th offensively among the D1 schools. And and still Parker's defense is going to be top 5. If they win the game 2-0, no one's going to be shocked. It can happen. they're going to win 10 games no matter what. So I've got Iowa in, by the way. I've got them in my top 15.
Based in part on their schedule, like you mentioned. Because not all 8-game, 9-game conference slates are built the same. You mentioned Missouri. I could easily point at Oklahoma, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and go, whoa, that's a damn murderer's row what they're facing.
It is.
So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be one or two teams that get the luck of the draw. That's just, it is what it is. It's not like the SEC is looking out for the blue blood that is Missouri football. That's the way it worked out.
But here's the deal with the metrics, okay? Even though Iowa and Missouri have easy schedules, they don't get killed by the metrics the same way you do if you're in any of the other conferences.
Very true. It's that 100%. Like that's
the part of it that's the problem.
That's the part. There's never been equity, if you will, in college football, and to your point, it doesn't exist now. And I think there's going to be some good Big 12 teams left out. Yep. I think there's going to be some good ACC teams left out, and there's always going to be a good Group 5 team that completely is left out, even with this one automatic bid.
But to your point. And we'll use the key word from the Democratic National Convention, we have to find the joy. I'm going to find the joy. I'm going to be joyous.
You and JC, once out of every 5 shows, JC wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, and he's full of piss and vinegar. That's what we got from Tim Brando this morning. I thought you were going to be joyful. You had that joy. You are fired up today. You are mad as hell, and you're not going to take it.
I love it. I've felt that way the whole off season, man. I get it. I'm Team Timmy B on the media, and I mean,
look, we all live in glass houses, all right?
Right,
no doubt.
But I'm sorry, fellas. Maybe it's my age creeping in. I don't give a damn anymore. I'm just going to say it, okay? And I'm not chasing rainbows. I love what I do. I will talk about the game and only the game. You might get a few little kicks from me from time to time if you know me. Those that are close to me might know, well, Timmy B must have meant something. Maybe that was a little dubious production. It was, you might read in between the lines on me, some on games. But bottom line is I'm calling the games and I'm enjoying the moment. And no, I don't have a show like yours format wise anymore. I'm not on television daily like I used to be, or radio daily. And so as a guest, from time to time, I'm going to bring a little fire and
you're venting
and vent.
Well, you know what,
I just think there's some problems within the storytelling of our industry. We've got the second most popular sport in America. And I know we've got 134 Division I teams. It's not like the NFL where there's 30, 32, whatever, any other sports. Bottom line is we need to do a better job of covering the sport nationally. And certainly
100%.
When it comes to that many hours for a pregame show, give me some meat, baby. I want some meat and potatoes. And the opinion segments are wonderful. But if you're repeating yourself over and over and over again, okay, well, we have to get the best teams. That's a setup. That's a setup for the end of the year when you're trying to make sure that you get Bama instead of said team, making sure you get Ohio State instead of said team. By God, we want the brands.
Well, my favorite used to be the BCS era, Timmy, and I loathed it. I for 20 years, I despised the BCS, and here's what I hated most. And with all due respect to somebody you knew very well, contemporary, who sadly passed away, John Saunders. Yep. John Saunders would defend it and go on the sports reporters and say, well, it worked.
And I went at it. Yeah.
And they'd say, well, why did it work? And he would say, well, because one played two.
Yeah.
Based on what?
Yeah.
Based on 7 computer polls and biased pollsters? That's how you say it worked? That's the most ridiculous argument.
You know how close we were. You realize how many times we went at it? It would be like Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan over drinks at 5 o'clock in D.C. Okay? Right. I'm Reagan. He's Tip O'Neill. Wasn't going to go well. And I would just chide him like you wouldn't believe. And I said, John, we've got a lot of those French that came over to Louisiana from Nova Scotia. And I've always loved Canada. God bless you. You're from Canada. But this is you're so wrong. Okay, so we had that argument time and time again.
And now we have a playoff, and yeah, we can gripe about certain things, but no one is going to say, "I wish we'd go back to the BCS." I mean,
No,
that's just
not at all.
insane talk when I hear something like that.
You do, those of you that, and I'm sure you heard it. We used to do. It's day 3,755 of the BCS. The world in crisis.
Who wrote the book "Death to the BCS"? Who wrote the book?
Wetzel.
That's right.
We had him on. Yeah,
Gary Wetzel.
I think it was Dan Wetzel and Dan Wetzel and Jeff Passan combined on that. Collaborated on that.
Yeah, which I couldn't think of a better title than that. Closing minutes here, Timmy. I know we got to let you run, but I didn't even get your favorites. So, okay, give me a Timmy B top 5 here for this year.
Oh, well, let me see.
Am I putting you on the spot? I figured maybe you had that. 3 of them are going to be from the Big 12. So we got K-State.
No.
We got Baylor on a rebound year for Aranda on the hot seat, which, by the way, he shouldn't be.
This is, again, my predicted finish, and I put 15 in there, so I'll go Evelyn Wood on you. K-State at 15. I had Florida State 14. I didn't have them getting in,
dropping,
but I had them at 14. Penn State at 13, just out. 12, I had Boise State. Boise State at 12 because that's the group of 5 team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 11, I've got Miami. They're the ACC champion. That's my party crasher in the ACC is Miami. I had Missouri 10, Iowa 9, Bama 8, Utah 7, Ole Miss 6, Notre Dame, which some people would have a problem with, but I think Notre Dame will navigate that schedule. SEC hacks already have A&M penciled in, winning that game by 2 touchdowns. Not going to happen. Texas 4, Ohio State 3, Georgia 2, and they'll play Lanning in the national title, and I've got Oregon winning it all.
Yeah, I don't keep in mind Dylan Gabriel's the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. Mm-hmm. I think you could actually bet now through all these betting apps, Oregon, Ohio State. If I'm not mistaken, Oregon's actually a slight favorite. So tell Mr. Klatt that. Yeah. That would hardly be an upset if Oregon beats Ohio State. So I don't think that's shocking at all.
I think Oregon will lose, by the way. I do think that they can lose. But if you've beaten Ohio State early, okay, I think that they may not win. Look, Ohio State could possibly come back after that loss and win the Big Ten, provided Oregon loses somewhere. And one of them could have 2 losses. I mean, they could. I just think from a matchup standpoint, and teams like Utah, by example, they're getting Keithy, the tight end, back. By the way, the guy that replaced him is playing with the Buffalo Bills now. So don't tell me they're not talented. Cam Rising is in his 18th year, I think, as a starting quarterback at Utah. And he's really, really good. And that defense, Morgan Scalley is the best defensive coordinator not named Parker in college football. That defense is hardwired to win on the road. That's the reason I think that they'll win the Big 12 is that they are probably the best road team, that went through the rigors of the Pac-12. And I know last year, it went poorly for them late, and they lost some games because they got banged up. But they're really good. I mean, really, really good. But to me, Oregon is the team that offensively, defensively, I love their club. I love the depth of their roster. I think that they can. It's going to be a long season, and that's a team that I think, like Georgia, can turn it up and last, to the finishing bell, so to speak.
Last question from me. You are still. It'll never be out of your blood. You still have you're an SEC guy in many ways, in my mind. And I say that as a positive. Your knowledge obviously is nationally speaking, but do you take any joy as somebody who has had some passion for that league? Let's just say in Texas and Oklahoma joining. I mean, I think it's incredibly exciting.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways, Texas and Oklahoma joining has really helped the Big 12 become the league that it is.
Right, no question.
And those teams, by the way, are getting bigger payouts with them gone than they got with them in.
That's right. Yeah.
Because of the way the structure of the Big 12 was, with those two always, seeing themselves as a cut above and and the league paying them in their minds appropriately for so many years. But the schedules, fellas, the great takeaway for me, and I'm sorry if I did sound a little too negative early on you today, but the greatest part of our season, our new season, is that these matchups are so much better. With the Pac-12 gone, we still have great matchups. And that's even true for the teams that are left in the Pac-12. Wazoo and Oregon State. I got a Texas Tech at Wazoo game a week from Saturday on Fox. It's going to be, I think, a hell of a game. Texas Tech is another one of those teams in the Big 12 could beat anybody.
Sure.
I mean, they just could. But Texas and OU and what they mean to the Southeastern Conference is just like UW and Oregon going into the Big Ten. How much more competitive is that league going to be now?
Fantastic.
The old SEC adage on the Big Ten, they only play 2 games, Michigan and Ohio State. Everybody else just sucks. That's so dated. That's so going the way of the dinosaur. I can't even begin to tell you. And now, we'll hear them from time to time on our friend Feinbaum's show. They ain't Georgia and they ain't Alabama. No, but they're Texas and they're OU, and their history is every bit as good as yours. Okay. No. So it's going to make it greater in the Southeastern Conference.
I think it's just we talked about the joy of the expanded playoff, the joy of those teams entering the SEC and the ones entering the Big Ten. The other knock on the Big Ten for years was, it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's a boring league. Well, obviously, Ohio State doesn't play 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And then you inject the offenses. It's in their DNA of Oregon, of Southern Cal. I think that's very good for that league. I think they needed some more exciting offenses one way or the other. So, I mean, look, like I said, I can nitpick a lot of different things here, and you've pointed them out, and we love you bringing your fire each and every time on this show. But I am in a very happy place in college football.
Good for you. Good for you. My goodness. JC, is it me? Is it me? Or should he have not been Kamala's pick for VP? I'm
my goodness.
My goodness. I'm hearing nothing but joy from Mike Moore.
Wow. I have a lot I could say here, and I'm just not going to.
Not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. This is the beauty of being.
By the way, from this point forward, I'm not doing any one-on-ones. Okay, and I'm no more one-on-ones.
We got to keep you from doing that interview and facing any questions from anybody, Tim.
We don't skew political here. This is not Outkick.
I love it, but you know what, JC? It's those moments with Mike when he expresses his happiness and his joy, and I feel like Dr. Death that just came in here, with too much fire, and I apologize if I was too negative.
No, it's good. We love it. We love the cornucopia of opinions, takes, moods, feelings. It all comes together in this melting pot that is JC and Morgan.
I love your new background, by the way.
JC gets the credit on all that.
Very nice.
And
our
Phil,
producer Phil
Monax.
We have a producer, but no, I would call it defending college football. I think with all these changes, sometimes I think the media and a lot of fans too have lost sight of everything.
Yeah,
what makes it special? And I think to me, you're just defending what's special about it.
Yeah. Bottom line is I have so much history with the sport, and I love it, but I'm not afraid to poke holes in what's wrong with it. I've always done that, and I'm not going to stop just because we've gone to 12. We got to make it better. We still have to make it better, and we have to make it more specific about what your accomplishments are on the field, as opposed to what the metrics say, that's being put in front of 12 people who are still in the end influenced by whatever they hear and whoever's around them at a given time. Let's make it more specific. Let's make more teams earn their way in, and tell me in your rules what you have to do to earn your way in. And beyond just winning your league, there's got to be more specifics to it, so we understand it. And until they do something like that, put cameras in the room. You want a great rating? We want access to why you do what you do. Okay? That's what we want.
That's like the fans that always say, I want the referees to hold a press conference after the game so they can address all the calls they've blown. They're never doing that, Timmy. They are never going to do that.
Enjoy it, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely. Keep up the good fight. Again, you'll be at Camp Randall, which that is still on the bucket list. I've been to 100-plus college campuses. Right. That is not one yet, but I will fix that at some point.
Well, and I'm fired up for my trip to Manhattan, Kansas for the game with Arizona. I think that's going to be a hell of a game, those Friday Night Lights games. And then we go to Nebraska the week after that for Illinois. And I think Nebraska is going to be, by the way, one of those teams kind of comes from nowhere and wins maybe 9 games.
I'm a Matt Rule believer. I've always been whatever happened with the Panthers, I don't care. Nobody's winning with the Panthers lately. Matt Rule is a very good college football coach. Yeah. If he can't do it in Lincoln, I'm convinced it can't be done. Yeah. Timmy, you get it done every time. We really appreciate it this time. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
You got it. Thanks, fellas. Always a pleasure being with you.
Right back at you. He is Timmy B, Tim Brando of Fox Sports, formerly of CBS College, formerly of just about everything. I mean, we remember him doing the CBS studio show, for a matter of fact. All right, we lost our producer, so we got to say an abrupt goodbye, and we will do that now for Mad Dog Phil, for JC, for everybody tuning in. We'll be back with you again Monday, back at our regularly scheduled time next week. I am Mike, and any final announcements, JC? I think that's about it.
Download the Chief Sports app. Get us live next week. And I appreciate Tim joining us today.
You got it.
Guys.
JCandMorgan.com, also the website. Take care, everybody. So long.